The gods stood on opposite sides of Akaru's glimmering expanse, their forms haloed by the energies of the ancient battleground. The air between them buzzed with anticipation, charged with the tension of two forces poised to collide. Akaru, the god's arena, absorbed the weight of their presence, its mirrored surface shimmering faintly as if preparing itself for the storm to come. As they squared off, a question lingered, unspoken yet heavy in the silence. Who would prevail? Let's take a step back to analyze these two powerhouses. To understand this battle was to understand the warriors. Shango, the Yoruba god of fire and thunder, radiated raw, untamed strength. His crimson lightning burned with the fury of molten fire, a relentless force that consumed everything in its path. He was physically imposing, his body a testament to countless battles won through sheer will and martial skill. Every muscle rippled with the memory of wars fought long before the mortal realm had taken shape. Yet it was not just his strength that made Shango formidable. It was his adaptability. Shango thrived in chaos, his movements fluid and unpredictable. With each clash he grew stronger, his instincts sharpening, his power evolving. This limitless potential made him a nightmare for even the most disciplined opponents. Amadioha, the Igbo god of justice and thunder, was a force of balance. Where Shango's fire burned wild and hot, Amadioha's lightning was precise, a white-hot blade that struck without error. He was smaller in stature, but no less imposing, his body honed for speed and agility. To Amadioha, every movement in battle was calculated, every strike deliberate. If Shango was the storm that razed cities, Amadioha was the scalpel that carved through the heart of chaos. On the surface, they were opposites. But beneath that contrast lay a truth both exhilarating and terrifying. They were two sides of the same coin. Physical strength versus speed. In sheer physical power, Shango stood unmatched. His punches could shatter mountains, and his kicks sent shockwaves that rippled across the land. He had trained relentlessly, mastering ancient forms of combat that combined raw strength with refined technique. But Amadioha's speed was a different kind of power. He moved with the grace of a lightning strike, his reflexes so sharp that even Shango's rapid assaults seemed sluggish in comparison. Where others would falter under Shango's relentless onslaught, Amadioha could predict and counter, turning the fire god's strength against him. The lightning they wield. Shango's crimson lightning was a rare and dangerous gift, a fusion of fire and thunder that burned hotter than the heart of a volcano. It crackled with life, each bolt carrying the force of an inferno, capable of reducing even divine barriers to ash. Amadioha's lightning, by contrast, was pure. White in its natural state, it embodied the essence of justice, sharp, precise, and unyielding. But his power did not stop there. When he pushed himself, his lightning turned blue, an ascendant form that carried greater destruction. And when he unlocked the depths of his divine potential, his lightning became purple, a force so overwhelming that it tore at the fabric of reality itself. In their base forms, Shango's crimson lightning held the advantage. Its destructive potential far exceeded Amadioha's white strikes. But in raw, unrestrained power, Amadioha's purple lightning was unparalleled, a force that no god had ever faced and survived. Battle experience versus battle IQ. Shango was a warrior through and through, his centuries of battle leaving him with a wealth of experience that no amount of training could replicate. He had fought gods and monsters alike, his body bearing the scars of conflicts that had shaped the very heavens. His instincts in combat were unmatched, allowing him to adapt and overcome even the most unexpected challenges. Amadioha, however, possessed something that countered Shango's experience: his mind. He was a strategist, a tactician who saw the battlefield not as a chaotic brawl, but as a puzzle to be solved. Every move he made was part of a larger plan, each feint and strike calculated to exploit his opponent's weaknesses, divine power and potential. If the fight remained physical, Shango's durability and adaptability would give him an edge. He was the kind of opponent who grew stronger with each clash, his power feeding on the energy of battle. There was no cap to his growth, no limit to how far he could push himself. But Amadioha carried something more profound. Through Orunmila's guidance, he had unlocked a power that placed him on a level no god could rival. If he tapped into that potential, the fight would end swiftly. Shango, for all his strength, would have only a 1 in 10 chance of victory. Yet, therein lay the danger. Orunmila had warned Amadioha that his greatest strength could also be his undoing. The power he wielded was tied to his role as the enforcer, a force of cosmic balance that could not be unleashed without consequence. To tap into it was to risk becoming something far beyond himself, and Shango knew this. This clash was not merely a test of strength or skill. It was a meeting of philosophies, chaos against order, fire against precision. As they stood on Akaru, the air between them shimmering with latent energy, the planet itself seemed to recognize the significance of what was about to unfold. Shango stood in the middle of Akaru's shimmering expanse, the double-headed axe resting easily on his shoulder. The planet's silver-gold surface reflected the faint flicker of his red lightning, casting an almost ethereal glow around him. He ran a hand along the edge of his weapon, a contemplative expression softening his usually mischievous grin. "It's been a while since I've fought here," Shango said, his voice carrying a faint note of nostalgia. This place, this was the gods' proving ground. Every clash, every victory, every defeat, the echoes are all still here. Amadioha watched him silently, his stance relaxed but ready. He could feel the weight of Shango's words, the history embedded in the very air of Akaru. "I was the champion here, you know," Shango continued, glancing at Amadioha with a sly smile. "Undefeated. I quit because no one could match me anymore. There's no fun in being invincible." Amadioha tilted his head slightly, his tone neutral. "And now?" Shango chuckled, the sound rich and full of amusement. Now I'm fighting you, and I've got to say, I didn't think there'd be anyone left who could make me feel like this. You're strong, Thunderer, so tell me, why have you never fought here before?" Amadioha's lips curved into a faint smile, though his eyes remained sharp. "I prefer the adventure of battle to the rules of the ring. Fighting here has its traditions, but it lacks freedom." Shango raised an eyebrow. "Freedom? You think fighting here is limiting?" "No," Amadioha replied, "but it's not my style. Besides, this planet may be where gods settle their differences, but none of the ones I've had problems with ever dared invite me here." Shango burst out laughing, the sound echoing across the mirrored plains. "Oh, scary! I get it now. No one wanted to face you here. Fighting you has shown me why. I might be the only one crazy enough to believe I can beat you." Amadioha crossed his arms, his expression unchanging. "You think you can win?" "Of course," Shango said without hesitation. "Ogun and Ikenga might hold their own, but they wouldn't beat you. Me, different story." "Funny you think that," Amadioha replied, a faint hint of humor in his tone. "Speaking of Ogun," Amadioha said, "I met him during my trials. He was supposed to teach me strategy in battle. He's cool. I respect him." Shango nodded. "Ogun is one of the cool ones. He taught me the same. Strategy, precision. He's a master." Shango's eyes glinted as he held up his double-headed axe. "He's more than that. Ogun is the greatest blacksmith. He's the one who made this, my Oshe." He ran his fingers over the weapon's polished surface, his tone shifting to one of pride. "Of course, I got the materials myself. Legendary stuff. Even a god has to risk his life to get it. This axe? Probably the strongest weapon ever forged. Amadioha's gaze lingered on the weapon for a moment before he looked back at Shango. Enough talk. Shango grinned, raising the axe with ease. You're right, let's get started. The air grew heavy as Shango's red lightning began to crackle more fiercely, dancing along the edges of his axe. He shifted into a fighting stance, the excitement in his eyes unmistakable. Amadioha, unarmed, stood his ground. But then, almost imperceptibly, he raised his hand. White lightning gathered at his fingertips, weaving itself into a shimmering blade of pure energy. The sword hummed softly, its brilliance a stark contrast to the fiery red glow of Shango's oshe. Shango's grin widened. Impressive. How'd you do that? Amadioha didn't answer immediately, his gaze focused. Finally, he said, Maybe I'll teach you. That depends on how well your shiny weapon holds up against it. Shango laughed, the sound loud and full of joy. You're on, Thunderer! The two gods moved simultaneously, their weapons colliding with a force that shook the planet. Red lightning clashed with white, releasing a blinding shockwave that rippled outward. Akaru absorbed the energy effortlessly, its golden glow brightening as it drank in the divine power. The battle began in earnest. Shango surged forward, his axe blazing with crimson energy. Each swing came with overwhelming force, the air itself bending under the weight of his strikes. Amadioha met him head-on, his sword of light deflecting the blows with precision, but the power behind each clash was undeniable. You're fast, Shango said, his voice filled with exhilaration as their weapons locked for a moment. But how long can you keep up? Amadioha didn't respond. He focused on Shango's movements, using his speed to dodge and counter. But Shango's strength was relentless, each attack faster and heavier than the last. The tide of the battle began to shift. Amadioha had taken 5 direct hits, each one a bone-shaking blow that sent him skidding across the mirrored ground. Shango's grin grew wider with every strike. Is this it? Shango shouted, his voice booming with disappointment. Is this all you've got, Thunderer? You disappoint me. Amadioha pushed himself to his feet, his chest heaving. He knew what Shango was doing. The fire god thrived on pushing his opponents to their limits, drawing out their full strength. Their weapons clashed again, the sound echoing across Akaru. The force drove Amadioha to his knees, his white lightning flickering faintly. Shango lowered his axe slightly, his grin faltering. I expected more. Amadioha exhaled slowly, rising to his feet. His stance shifted, and the air around him grew still. A faint purple glow began to emanate from his markings, spreading across his body like cracks in stone. His eyes, once glowing white, turned an intense shade of violet. The lightning around him changed, sparking and crackling with an energy that felt otherworldly. Shango froze, his grip on his axe tightening. He could feel the shift in power, the sheer weight of Amadioha's presence. A normal god would have fled at the sight of it. But Shango, he laughed. The sound was wild, unrestrained, and filled with delight. There it is, he shouted, his voice brimming with excitement. That's what I've been waiting for. His red lightning flared, surging through his axe as he stepped forward, his expression one of pure joy. Let's do this for real, Amadioha. Show me you've got what it takes to lead the alliance. As the two gods prepared to clash again, the scene shifted, leaving the mirrored plains of Akaru behind and returning to the quiet tension of Allah's realm. Allah stood in the heart of her realm, her presence steady but faintly diminished. Though she remained the embodiment of the earth's strength, the strain of holding the world together during Amadioha and Shango's clash had taken its toll. Around her, the vines and roots that wove through her domain pulsed with faint energy, a reflection of her focus and resilience. Beside her, Ogun and Ikenga spoke in hushed tones. their gazes occasionally flicking toward the restrained beast bound by Ayla's divine vines. The creature pulsed faintly with an unnatural light, its essence radiating a quiet, malevolent energy. "We need to send word to Orunmila," Ikenga said, his voice firm. "He needs to see this for himself." Ala nodded, her gaze never leaving the beast. Agreed. He foresaw this, but there is more to this fragment than even I anticipated. She extended her hand, and a small bird of glimmering stone took shape from the air, its eyes glowing faintly green. With a soft hum, it flapped its crystalline wings and took flight, disappearing into the horizon. Far away, the bird reached Orunmila, who stood in quiet contemplation within his sanctuary of swirling runes and ancient tomes. The message from Allah unfurled before him, its meaning clear. His expression remained calm, his hands clasped behind his back. He had expected this. The threads of fate had already whispered their warnings to him. Still, he murmured to himself, a fragment given form, that is troubling. With a deliberate motion, he began gathering his tools, a small tray etched with divination symbols, a staff carved with intricate patterns, and a pouch of sacred chalk. He had seen much in his countless years of guiding the gods and mortals alike, but there was something about this moment that carried an unusual weight. "I must see this for myself," he said softly, his voice carrying an undercurrent of urgency. But as Orunmila prepared for his journey, another figure was already within Allah's realm, Ibiru. The Celestial moved through the forest of Allah's domain with silent purpose, his golden robes shimmering faintly in the green light of the goddess's realm. He was tall and lean, his face serene yet bearing faint lines of sorrow, as though the weight of countless lifetimes rested on his shoulders. Ibiru's hands were never still, constantly tinkering with small devices that floated around him like a constellation of tiny stars. Each device pulsed with a faint glow, emitting soft hums as they shifted and rearranged themselves under his touch. He approached Allah with a bow so low that it seemed almost reverent. "My queen," he said, his voice soft but steady. "You called, and I have come." Allah turned to him, a faint smile touching her lips. "Ibiru," she said, her tone warm despite her weariness. "It has been too long." "I am here to serve," he replied simply, straightening but keeping his gaze respectful. Ogun leaned closer to Ikenga, muttering under his breath. "Ibiru, I didn't think he'd still be around after all this time." Ikenga nodded, his expression thoughtful. "He's loyal to Allah, utterly. They say he owes her everything." Indeed, the story of Ibiru was one that few knew, but those who did spoke of it with both awe and sorrow. But we will tell it another time.